Chapter 32. The Gerudo Chief. I am told, said Riju, the chief of the Gerudo, that I have you to thank for exposing one of the Yiga who infiltrated our city. She did not say killed, and Zelda wondered why Paya, whom Riju was addressing, had done much more than expose the assassin. The Gerudo chief was a young woman, younger than Zelda and Paya by at least a few years, young enough that she would have only come up to Zelda's shoulder standing up, which was saying a lot for one of the Gerudo. She looked even smaller on the vast throne that served as the seat for the matrilineal chain of chiefs, multiple cushions piled on top of each other so that she could be seated high enough to rest her arms naturally. There were steps in front of the throne so that she could set herself atop this mountain of support. It was a testament to Riju's careful upbringing that she was able to recline amidst the evidence of her smallness and look as comfortable and assured as a woman twice her age and twice her size. Zelda and Paya were kneeling in front of her, and Paya had only blanched a very little when Zelda bent the knee. The assassin exposed herself, Chief Riju, Paya said. I simply did as training demanded so that I could protect myself and my companion. Humph. The room was lined by guards, but the one who stood next to the throne, Uliera, Zelda was sure that was her name, was a world removed from them. She was thickly muscled, half a head taller than the average warrior of her people, and when she did bother to move she had a sense of deep grace and power. She reminded Zelda of an enormous cat, all seeming leisure hiding a fundamentally dangerous power and speed. That impression was familiar, and Zelda tried to remember why while Riju scowled at her guard. If you have anything to say, Uliera, Riju said, trying to be withering and not quite hitting the mark, please feel free to speak your mind. As my chief commands, Uliera responded, though her eyes never left Paya. It occurs to me that if she simply did as training demanded, then her training must be very intense indeed. Witnesses from the guard suggest that she is a capable, seasoned warrior. She shifted her shoulders, the muscles beneath her skin rolling. It also seems that she was targeted by the Yiga. Paya blushed, lowered her eyes to floor, and Zelda had to fight the urge to snap at their hosts. Being questioned this way was about all that Paya could withstand. To be subject to more attentions than that would overwhelm her. More likely the Yiga were targeting me, however obliquely. Zelda cut in. Paya breathed through her nose, Uliera scowled, and Riju tilted her head while a faint smile played across her mouth. Forgive my impertinence. May I address you? The Gerudo chief waved her hand, her smile shifting over into a grin. Please. A twist of her mouth as she thought for a moment. You should probably stand, while you're at it. Zelda did. The act of standing gave her a moment to go over a list of possibilities. Riju knew that something was off about her. Uliera was, according to some of the other guards, the effective head of the entire defensive element of Gerudo town. It made sense that she would have heard what she had said to the guards the night before and reported it to Riju. It would be easy to focus solely on the chief and her youth, Zelda thought, straightening her tunic as she stood, adjusting the shake slate, marking how both of the women in front of her glanced at it. But anyone who looks at Uliera and mistakes her for a god is missing a great deal. She is to the chief as undoubtedly was to the royal family a century ago. Well, it doesn't matter. We'll need their help in the time to come, and our enemies already know we're here. We are attempting to awaken the divine beasts, said Zelda. The silence in the room suddenly became much thicker, the tension higher. Riju and Uliera did not attempt to feign surprise, but the sharp intake of breath from some of the other gods in the room spoke to disbelief, some degree of anger, and... Did she feel hope in the air? She hoped she did. The hero is locked in battle with the calamity, but we hope to break that stalemate. We. Hold, Riju said, her hand lifted. The chief cut her eyes toward her guardian, and Uliera struck her greatsword hard against the floor. As a body the other gods turned and left the room. None of them threw a glance over their shoulder. Those Zelda spotted at least one who was actively fighting the urge. In seconds the only ones present were herself, Paya, Riju, and Uliera. I think you can stand up now, Paya, Zelda said. Uliera glared at her, but Riju nodded, and Zelda touched Paya's shoulder so that her own guard knew to rise. She returned her attention to the woman on the throne. You already know of what we've been doing, then? We have received reports, Riju said, slowly, carefully, from travelers and merchants all over Hyrule. The divine beast of the Zora has ceased overfilling their reservoir, and the Gorons are no longer menaced by their own mountain. I'm told, in fact, that the temperature on Death Mountain is beginning to drop, however marginally. She leaned her cheek on her fist. More, I'm told that 2 Hylian women were present in the city when the divine beasts were tamed, one with golden hair and the other with silver. My apologies, we Garuda do not see many Sheikah. She let that hang in the air. More accurate, though, are the reports that one of you was carrying a Sheikah slate. Zelda's fingertips brushed against it reflexively, not protectively, but to make sure that it was still there. Riju smiled again. Bulliera. Her guard gave a quick nod. Doesn't she look familiar? Not that I've seen anyone like her. What? I recall that the great Urbosa was dear friend to the Queen of Hyrule in her time. When the Queen passed, she wrote a great deal about the Queen's daughter, Velda. He looked so much like the princess, as Urbosa described her. Silence in the room again, deeper and more insistent than any of those that had come before. This is fine. This matters not at all. Our enemies already know we're here. What different that friends should know, too? As you say, Chief Riju. Bulliera's voice was low, her words carefully meted out. Regardless, Riju said, I can guess to your purpose here. You wish to free the divine beast Von Aberus from the power that drives it to roam around the desert in fury. Here Riju let her mask slip. For just a moment, where it had not done so before, she touched the fingertips of her left hand to her brow, as if treating the pain of a headache with focused pressure. You've probably heard something about it from the townsfolk. It seems to wander closer all the time. My people fear that soon it will destroy the city completely. We would prevent that, if we can. This conversation felt almost normal. Now she had had it 2 times before, albeit in different circumstances. There is a terrible spirit that has taken possession of the divine beast, and it. Her voice caught in her throat. She stopped, examined herself, ignoring Bulliera's raised eyebrow and the turn of Paye's head. Zelda was not, as best she could tell, upset about this. Talking about the entrapment of the champions was as routine to her as the rest of this conversation. It was horrifying, yes, but she was working to fix it. She needed to fix it. Riju prompted her. Why is it harder to say this of Urbosa? It is the same monster that felled Lady Urbosa a century ago. Her spirit is on the divine beast, too, waiting to be freed. Nothing now. What had that feeling been, before? An echo from something outside of memory? She almost didn't notice Bulliera's glare or how Riju's eyes had started to widen. We have already freed the spirits of the Zora and Goron champions, Mifo and Daruk. If you wish, I can provide proof that we are capable of. That won't be necessary. I beg your pardon? Riju leaned forward in her chair. Now, her mass of red hair, bound behind her, made her seem even smaller than she was. In another time, another place, with another person, the Gerudo chief would not have been so honest with how she felt. Zelda could not know that, though. I believe you. There is no real question about who you are, I don't think, though I admit I do want to see the proof you could provide. Still, it doesn't matter. Even if the great Urbosa's spirit is trapped on Von Aberus, we are powerless to lend her aid. Zelda scowled. She had just gotten finished explaining how they'd done this before, wondered if she would have to repeat herself, but Riju shook her head. Von Aberus is not like the other divine beasts. You've seen the sandstorm that enshrouds it from a distance? That sandstorm is controlled by Aberus itself, a defensive mechanism, but it's only half of what Von Aberus can do. The other half is that it controls lightning. Riju's smile was wry. Now, I've heard of your battle alongside the Zora. I wish I could have seen it. If we were to attempt something similar with Von Aberus, it would kill every single woman who came within range of it, and the divine beast's reach is long. Zelda blinked, going over possibilities in her head. How fast can it generate bolts of lightning? 1 strike every few seconds, and its targeting is very precise. It does not miss. Riju straightened her back, grinned ruefully. I can tell by your face you are wondering how I know that, and if we lost lives in exchange for the information. Zelda nodded. Asking would have been an awful thing, but if Riju could just read it in her face, then there was no point in trying to hide it. I am glad to say that we did not. I went and obtained this information myself. utilizing the blessing of my ancestors. Unfortunately, Riju gestured to her right, and for the first time Zelda noticed that a carved wooden head sat on a dais next to the throne, clearly meant to hold some decorative piece. The instrument of my ancestors, the Thunder Helm, was recently stolen by the Yiga. Using its power, the chiefs of the Gerudo can control lightning. I am not yet fully proficient in the art, but even I can turn away the lightning thrown by the divine beast. The Yiga, Zelda said to herself. Buliera was apologizing to Riju, and Riju was telling her guard that there was no point in apologizing, and all of these fell away from Zelda's ears. She thought of the woman dead in the street, of the fight, or the very end of it that she had managed to see. She did not see how Paya was staring at her in this moment, was too absorbed in her thoughts to perceive how her friend was praying that this conversation would not turn out the way Zelda was already steering it. They stole the Thunder Helm, and they attempted to abduct my friend. Is their base near here? Buliera and Riju both looked up from their conversation. It was Buliera who spoke first. Yes. As best as we have been able to determine through scouting, their base is in a canyon to the north, between the desert and the highlands. Riju continued for her. We have been attempting to muster enough troops to mount an expedition and assault on the base, but they've been harrying us at every turn, and the populace is already uneasy with Von Aberers wandering the desert. If we leave the city undefended, I fear that the result will be much worse than a stolen helmet. Zelda turned her head to the north, as if she could see through the walls, and she wondered. Thank you for meeting with us, Chief Riju, she said. We have been given much to think about. May we be excused, so that we may confer in private? Of course. Return whenever you like. The two of you are guests of the Gerudo. If you wish to speak with the gods, Buliera said, you can find them training in the yard adjoining this chamber. You only have to leave through that door. Thank you. I will do just that. It would not be fair to say that Paya's attention had slipped. All of her senses were open, as wide as they'd ever been, so that even in the middle of the training yard where the city guard practiced with spear and bow and sword, over the sound of voices raised in battle cries and the clash of metal on metal and the glare of the sun, she was still aware of almost everything around her. She had counted every woman in the yard, had taken note of which weapons they currently bore and how proficient they seemed to be based on posture and grip. She would know almost instantly if anyone else were to enter here, posing a threat to herself or to her princess. So, no, her attention had not slipped. Say instead that there was a part of her mind that was occupied, as Zelda spoke to the captain of the guard and then to one of the sergeants. Her mind had gone north, as Zelda's had some minutes ago, but she had some better idea of what to suspect. At least, she thought she did. She pored over the expectation, the understanding of what Zelda was already planning, and it precluded her ability to fully engage with any of the conversation around her. This wasn't her disadvantage. Anyone around her, Zelda included, would think she was only acting as a very focused bodyguard. Hey, I haven't seen Berta. Where's she gone off to? She said she was going to scout the thieves' hideout, but then she left before we could say anything. Now that I think about it, she's been gone for 2 days. I wonder what happened to her. Are you serious? Zelda was looking back and forth between the guards as the sergeant's shouting grew even angrier and more emphatic, too absorbed in the unfolding drama to notice much else. That was good. She was thinking ahead, but she could still be in the moment. But no, Paya thought, that's not good. If she's only in this moment, then she doesn't understand what's happening. She doesn't understand what she intends to do. Paya went around in circles in her head, the kind of wordless fretting that prevented coherent thought or inner monologue. She went through the mechanical motions of following Zelda, of answering questions, but the gap she left in conversation was eventually noticed when Zelda stopped prompting her and the trip back to the inn was made in silence. I think I would like to try the spa package tonight, Zelda said as they passed by the reception desk. This was to Paya, so the receptionist didn't do more than perk up. If you think that is best. Yes. The extra rupees don't seem too much compared to being properly rested, and I'd like to experience a spa once. As you say. They returned to their room. Zelda drew the curtain shut, took off her cloak, sat on the edge of her bed. Pio, in turn, sat on the edge of her own, the two of them facing each other. I should go to the shop that Isha recommended. And hers, too, actually. Our orders should be ready by now. A pause. The princess leaned forward, tilting her head, and her eyes were so wide and green. Talk to me, she said. Not a command but a request, almost plaintive. Pi had been hiding in that quiet place in her mind, pacing around the idea of what Zelda was about to do, what she was willing to commit both of them toward. Her princess's voice called her out, so she returned, rising back up to the physical world. Zelda's closeness and the openness of her stirring should have embarrassed her, but Paya was still holding onto the idea, and it was heavier than her own reactions. You intend to get the Thunderhelm back? Zelda was quiet for a moment, considering that. Then, I intend to ask you if you think it's possible. Possible? Yes, it's possible. Paya realized how long she had been holding this in. The woman on the road outside of Kakariko, Zelda tumbling on Death Mountain, the blights who bore the mark of Ganon, hands reaching for her own neck, a sword in her hands plunging into another's chest. They'd all been sitting in that quiet place in her heart. That place was getting full. Soon, it would burst. She couldn't let it out yet. She had to talk, still. It's possible. You could do it, certainly. You're. I am not invincible, Zelda said, firmly enough that it was almost a reprimand. I admit it would be very difficult for any of the Yiga to really hurt me, but we are talking about their den. We might be dealing with all of them, all at once. Please, Paya. She reached across the space between them, touching Paya's hands with her fingertips. I need to hear what you really think. If we want to retrieve the Thunderhelm, then what are we going against? Paya blinked. The heat still rose in her face at the touch of Zelda's hand. She looked away, focused again on the conversation, on the idea, on the question, on the fear. I wish that I knew. I only know stories about the Yiga, really. We, the Shaker, have been so isolated for so long that we've nearly lost track of them completely. Grandmother tells me that until 100 years ago we had thought them extinct, and 100 years hasn't been enough time to learn about them. After the calamity, I am far more ignorant in this regard than I should be. I'm sorry. Zelda nodded slowly, withdrew her hand, kept studying Paya's face. You're not sure. But you have suspicions. They're not really worth. I want to hear them, Paya. She paused, breathed, arranged herself. The quiet place was not full to bursting yet. She could take out some small piece of it without it spilling forth. When I hit that woman with the display case, I didn't intend to kill her. I was reacting out of surprise and fear, and in those situations, I am trained to strike with maximum force. The impact should have killed her. Instead, it only cut open a spot on her temple. She swallowed. I thought that it was blood, but at second glance I saw that it wasn't. It was malice. Yes, of course, Zelda would have sensed it. Paya nodded. It was. That is why I used my sword, your blessing, to kill her. It neutralized the malice, kept it from keeping her alive, animating her body to fight on when she should have fallen. Her hand was not shaking. She was sure. They sent an assassin who had the malice inside of her, who bled as if it had replaced her blood. I suspect that whatever we find in the Yiga's base, it will be something truly awful. They have worshipped Ganon for 10,000 years. If you should grant them any blessing at all, if the malice propagates inside of them, they will be worse than the monsters that roam the land. Zelda finished. Paya nodded again. Forgive my reticence. They are not my people. We split from each other long ago. Still, when I saw that woman on the ground, I thought how much she looked like one of us. Like a Sheikah, I mean. And she let that thing inside of her. It changed her. It may have changed all of them. It was like looking into a mirror and seeing myself as I may have been if I'd been born in another tribe. I am. She breathed again. She could get this out. I am afraid. Silence between them. No one was out in the hall, at least not that Paya could hear. I could go in without you, Zelda said. I wouldn't fight them with swords and arrows. I would use all of my power to take back the Thunderhelm. It might be safer that way, then.
The princess's eyes were wide again, looking at a spot just past Pai's head. She was thinking very hard, apparently.
I suspect that the calamity is no longer trying to kill me every time it senses me using my power. This might be the safest method we have to get back the helm and approach Fawn Navarus. I would sooner die,
Pai said,
than let you go into that place alone.
Zelda said nothing. Pai said nothing, too, strangling her urge to apologize. She would not apologize for the truth. Not this time. Not about this. She would protect Zelda. Even against the calamity itself. Even if she was only an insect clambering over the feet of giants. What a freeing idea, she realized. After a long, long time, Zelda nodded.
Kaya said, there are preparations we will need to make first. We may not be able to leave until tomorrow morning. Will you give me a moment to write in my diary? Of course. I'll check our equipment. It will be best if you ready your armor. There is a weapon I think will serve us.
Riju sighed, taking a moment to focus on her breathing. In through the nose, hold for 3 seconds, out slowly through the mouth. In, hold, out. In, hold, out. The moments of quiet she got to experience during the day were rare and fleeting, but her breathing could extend the experience of them. Let her carry the quiet around with her after the noise had reasserted herself. Bullier had taught it to her, after Riju's mother had died. If she listened carefully, she could sometimes hear her guard doing it, too. This was not one of those times, but that was all right. She'd make the quiet last as long as it could. Which, in the end, wasn't very long. A god's voice from outside.
Get out of here, kid. This is no place to play.
The rejoinder, from a girl maybe a third Riju's age.
I'm not playing. I have a message for the chief. Oh, a message. Ah? All right. Do you want me to give it to her? I'll make sure she gets it immediately. No, you won't. You just want me to go away.
Riju looked over at Bulliera, who was rolling her eyes before noticing that her chief was trying to catch her attention. Riju gestured with 2 fingers. Bulliera knit her brow. Riju made the gesture again.
Let the child in,
Bulliera said, her voice filling the audience chamber and echoing out and over the argument.
The chief will see her, now.
There was a very loud, very childish, very rude noise from outside, and then the girl appeared in the doorway. She spent a moment looking up and around, openly shocked by the grandeur of the room. Was I ever surprised by anything that much when I was young? Before remembering what she was doing and where she was, dropping into an almost picturesque bow.
Chief Riju,
the girl said.
I'm told,
Riju said,
that you have a message for me. Why yes, Chief. It's right here.
The girl produced a paper envelope, sealed with wax, the outside marked in a script that Riju could not make out at that distance, especially given how much the kid was waving it around. Behind it was a book, roughly the same size as the envelope, though much thicker.
You may approach the chief,
Bullier said, clearly as eager to get this audience over with as Riju was eager to see the message. The girl bowed again and then crossed the floor with an even, measured step, as if going too fast would offend the people around her. Riju, for her part, tried very hard not to betray her impatience. She still couldn't make out the script. When the girl drew close enough, Riju held out her hand, and the girl placed the envelope and book delicately on her palm.
Thank you. Tell me, do you know who this is from? Yes, Chief. It's from the high-end lady with silver hair.
The girl leaned in close, as if the 2 of them were conspiring, and gave Bullier a wary glance. Clearly, she considered Riju a fellow child, which made Riju wince and Bullier smirk.
I heard that she fought one of the Iga and saved the jewelry shop in the square, so I thought it might be important.
Thank you, Riju said. Why would the Sheikah send her a message?
You've done very well, getting this to me. Tell me, were you paid for the delivery? Yes, Chief. She gave me 5 rupees.
Riju nodded.
A fair sum, I think. Still, as I'm your chief, I cannot let her generosity supersede my own. Speak with my attendant, Bulliera, and she will give you 10 rupees as a reward for your service.
The girl's eyes lit up, and Bully Air's eyes nearly bugged out of her head while she mouthed the words, "I'll give her what?"
"Thank you, Chief. If you ever need any letters delivered, let me know. I'll be sure to do that."
The girl scampered, pranced, really, over to Bully Air, who looked very severe and ominous in a way that did not affect the girl at all because it was cut through by the resentful opening of her wallet. Riju took a moment to turn the envelope in her hands. Her name was written on it in Hylian, though the script wasn't quite the same as that used in Central Hyrule, more angular, apps. She turned the paper in her hands, savoring the moment. She opened the envelope, and while Bully Air was counting out rupees, the chief began to read. She freed you. I hope that this writing finds you well and apologize for the removed method by which I am forced to communicate with you. I have caused a disruption in your city in my failure to handle the Yiga assassin more capably, and can only hope that the work I do now might serve to alleviate the pains caused by my inadequacy. My name is Paya, of the Shaker. I am traveling with Zelda, the Crown Princess of Hyrule, who is charged by the goddess Hylia to bring an end to the threat of the calamity, Ganon. I tell you this not to evince the importance of the task we undertake, that very importance should preclude me telling you these things, as secrecy is one of the only defenses we have against our enemies. However, as our secrecy has been compromised and there are still other concerns to be addressed, I feel that I am left with no choice but to burden you with the knowledge of what is to come. Please forgive my presumption. The Princess Zelda has decided that we will travel to the lair of the Yiga and retrieve the Thunder Helm. There can be no doubt that she will succeed in this aim. I pray that you do not suffer a situation or disaster that would prove it to you, but please believe me when I say that she is the most powerful force freely walking the land of Hyrule, and that she will return in triumph. Far less certain is my own return, which is why I have entrusted you with this information and the diary attached to it. Should I fail to return with my liege, please take the diary I have given to you and see it delivered to Impa in Kakariko village in the Necluder region. The diary is a recording of my travels with the princess and contains information that may be vital in the battle against the calamity. Should I die, this information must reach the Sheikah Elder. Many lives may depend on it. I had intended to translate the diary into plain language. It is currently encoded, and if read now would only seem like a recording of my own musings and reflections. As we are now faced with the task of confronting the Yiga, I will no longer have time to edit and decode this information, so it must be sent in its raw form. I humbly beseech you to fulfill my two requests. Firstly, if Zelda should return without me, get this diary to Impa. Secondly, do not read it. Even encoded, the information therein could still reveal itself and endanger anyone who becomes privy to it. Again, please do not read it. And, more importantly and most especially, do not let Zelda read it. I go now with the princess to prepare for our battle. May the light of Hylia illuminate your path. With apologies and gratitude. Hi. The Lionel of Bloimusmandin returned, in time, as the beast of shadow did when Earth bled. Not even the burning light of the divine beast could kill it forever. The mountain still belonged to it, though it now avoided the long, killing slope burned out by the ancient weapon, where the ground had become so smooth, so slick, that its hooves could find no purchase. The days passed for it. The Zord did not come near it. It did not hunt, it waited. One day, a presence slipped near to it, ascending the waterfalls. Ixor, but bigger. The beast sniffed at the air, trying to catch the scent, but whatever the presence was, it was downwind of the Lionel and moving quickly. The Lionel's senses could not suss out the location, whatever it was. It could hide its presence, even its intent, like a hunter. A flash of memory, and the Lionel turned to face the direction it knew the threat was coming from. Its sword and shield were in its hands. The air around it burned with the ozone smell of the thunder arrows buried in trees and stones. A whistle, the lowest sound in the world. The Lionel turned. Roaring. The sound of its own body masked the sound of a bowstring drawn taut, and then the release. Fire exploded beneath the Lionel's chin, blasting its perceptions to smithereens, and it roared as the strength left its limbs. It sank, catching itself with its shield, heaving its breath. Footsteps. Footsteps coming fast. It couldn't move. Eyes blurry while it gathered itself, the Lionel still looked up. It saw a figure standing on a stone, holding a bow with a thread made of light. The hunter. The hunter from before. It saw another figure, closer, much closer, small, insignificant, but wearing the skins of guardians, golden mane flowing behind as they charged. Closing the last of the distance, the nearer figure raised a weapon. The Lionel saw a sword. The Lionel saw that the sword was lined with serrated, rotating, glowing teeth. End of chapter.